Good morning. Welcome to our Bible study this day as we continue through the season of Epiphany.
Good morning.
But we've got, we're slowly leading up to Lent, so we're getting excited for that. But we're still learning about the beginning of Jesus' ministry as he's bringing God's light into the world and finding the first disciples and beginning with some of his first sermons.
Let's see. Well, we do have a couple of people. Excellent.
Yep. And so, but we'll be starting in-person worship this week, so we'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of our Bible study. So look for more information on that. But we're excited we're able to do that. Okay. Well, should we begin with a word of prayer?
Absolutely.
Let us pray. Everlasting God, you give strength to the weak and power to the faint. Make us agents of your healing and wholeness, that your good news may be known to the ends of your creation, through Jesus Christ, our Savior and Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Well, we continue this week in the Gospel according to St. Mark, in chapter 1, verses 29 through 39. Here, everywhere Jesus goes, many people expect him to set them free from oppression. Everywhere he goes, he heals people and sets them free. Disease, devils, and death are running for their lives. The forces that diminish human life are rendered powerless by Jesus. And this picks up right after where we were last week. So as soon as Jesus and the disciples left the synagogue, he entered the house of Simon and Andrew with James and John. Now Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told him about her at once. He came and took her by the hand and lifted her up. Then the fever left her, and she began to serve them. That evening at sunset, they brought to him all who were sick or possessed with demons, and the whole city was gathered around the door. And he cured many who were sick with various diseases, and cast out many demons. And he would not permit the demons to speak, because they knew him. In the morning, while it was still very dark, he got up and went out to a deserted place, and there he prayed. And Simon and his companions hunted for him. When they found him, they said to him, "Everyone is searching for you." And he answered, "Let us go on to the neighboring towns, so that I may proclaim the message there also, for that is what I came out to do." And he went throughout Galilee, proclaiming the message in their synagogues and casting out demons. The gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ. As we go through the Gospel of Mark, we're paying close attention to the wording and the phrasing that Mark uses, because unlike the other Gospels, Mark is very short and to the point. He doesn't throw in anything extra. So when there are details, when there is something that kind of sticks out, we know that it's there for a reason. So we try to pay attention to that. All right. Imagine being in bed with a fever. Imagine your son-in-law bringing home 4 guests into your home, but you are too sick to serve as their host. Imagine one of those guests being Jesus. Imagine. This story about Simon's mother-in-law is an easy one to imagine. Jesus heals her, then takes her by the hand and lifts her up. What a tender image. Even though she literally stood up, there is a sense of being lifted up emotionally, which comes with being healed. Mark describes this woman leaving her sickbed after her fever is gone and serving her guests. Simon's mother-in-law more than likely had an attitude of serving before her illness, but her gratitude at being healed overflows into her care for others. How do you imagine the conversation around their table? And describe a situation in your own life when someone rose off a sickbed and began serving. So, how do you imagine the conversation at their table? Mother-in-law has been healed. I wish we had her name. And now she's serving them at a meal.
Well, this is immediately after Jesus spoke in the synagogue and cast out the demon. So I can't imagine the conversations among the disciples trying to figure out what is going on. What does this all mean? Not only can he cast out demons, but here he's healed Simon's mother-in-law. I mean, he has more power than they probably even have imagined. And there he is calling them.
I can see the mother-in-law, of course, is going to pay special attention to the guests, but I can see her really, really paying special attention to Jesus, and fussing over him a bit, and also just the thanks and the joyfulness. It's been, I would think, an exhausting day for all of them, but now they're sitting down to a meal with joy. And I imagine Peter is very, very happy, and,
Yeah, he doesn't have to do the cooking and cleaning.
No, he doesn't.
But
And part of it is that sense of honor. I mean, her role is to be the hostess. This is not just, this is something I like to do. I mean, this is culturally very significant. And so she is grabbing hold of her position and her power and her sense of identity in what she's doing. So there's a lot going on here. It's not just physically being healed, but that social sense and that.
it's about having her status restored.
Yes.
She's no longer the one who's sick, but the one who is
Yeah.
among the living and serving.
Yeah, exactly. The one who was being served, right, now is serving. And, I think we can all say that we have an easier time offering help to others than sometimes we have of receiving help, So I think this would be a powerful time for this woman and her family. Describe a situation in your own life when someone rose off a sickbed and began serving. I can think of one. Can you? Mm-hmm. I think it was my father's birthday, and we had gone out to eat, and my mother was not feeling well at all. So we quick finished up and came home, and we were just finally kind of settled in, and my mother's going to go to bed early. She just really wasn't feeling good. When all of a sudden, like a dozen of their friends show up as a surprise to wish happy birthday to my dad and have a little party. And my mom had actually just sat down on her bed to get ready to, take off her shoes and just started to relax. But she got up and found some food and found something to drink and just made it happen. And out of love for my dad and their friends. But I remember as a little girl being very angry. And one of the guys of the friends noticed, and he said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "My mom's really sick, but, now she's had to go and work." But again, I think she would have been horrified and embarrassed, and even if she didn't come out and help. So it's yours.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've done visits with people who are recovering from cancer or going through other illnesses, and their family or friends are there, and I walk in, and their immediate response is to think that they have to be the ones to get up and go get coffee and go get cookies or donuts or some sort of snack, even though they're the ones who are sick, that I'm there to visit. And I'm healthy enough most of the time to be able to pick up a pot of coffee. And their friends and family are there who really want to do it, but they insist because it's their role as serving hospitality.
Yeah. I had many an older person just be so apologetic and just so horrified that you come to visit and they can't offer you a cookie or coffee, they're just not able to, and they just feel so wrong. And trying to assure them that that's okay, it's all right, rest.
Okay. Well, for Jesus, his day is not done. At sundown, sick people and the possessed with demons are brought out to the house. In fact, the whole city gathers around the door. Imagine a whole city waiting to be restored to health at your door. Ugh. Jesus did not have a 9-to-5 job. His ministry continues into the evening hours as he models the same servant attitude as Simon's mother-in-law. Do you think all those who came to be healed wanted to be disciples of Jesus? Why or why not? Well, first of all, just to explain why they came out at sundown is that's when the Sabbath day ended. Mm-hmm. They couldn't go for walks, do any work until after the sun set. And so that would be the beginning of their freedom to be able to go and actually find Jesus. Mm-hmm. Yeah, culture moves us to do a lot of things.
Yeah, it shapes our behaviors.
The expectations. But back to, do you think all those who came to be healed wanted to be disciples of Jesus? Why or why not? No. No. Well, people will do a lot of things in order to get healed or to be made better or to get a step up in the community.
Yeah. Yeah, they heard that Jesus could heal people, and they were there for that. You know, if faith came from that, if they became a follower after that, but most of them just wanted to be healed, and then they could go home and resume their lives, like the mother-in-law had been able to.
Yeah.
And I don't know that we condemn them for that. I mean, it's very understandable.
At least it doesn't tell us Jesus was quizzing them on the catechism before he did the healing.
Yes, they didn't have to prove something or join something in order for Jesus to take care of them. You know, and that should be reflected in our lives as well, and in the life of the congregations. You know, we don't make people jump through the hoops in order to receive love and grace and mercy and whatever help it is that we have to give. I think that's why we find it really offensive when there's so-called Christian groups that force people to listen to a sermon or, you know, whatever it is, prove something, pay something, or sign a contract, or, you know, it's like paying for the help that you're going to receive. And it's like, no, yeah, maybe somebody will not be truthful and try to get away with something, whatever, take advantage of the situation, sure, but that doesn't negate the fact that there's people in need. You know, a few people like that doesn't mean that we don't take care of people.
Yeah, I saw an article yesterday in the news where a woman didn't read the fine print in her contract to join the church and was let go from the church.
What was the fine print?
Oh, just about what you could say when you weren't in church. And so some churches do put requirements.
Wow. What if we require everybody on something?
Well, they are required to laugh at some point.
Well, yeah. But like we required them to say, our pastors are awesome at least once a day.
Well, that's just for the confirmation students.
Oh, okay. We'll keep it to them.
So, but...
My turn?
Yeah.
All right. Note how the demons know Jesus. What a contrast to others who have such difficulty discerning the identity of Jesus. Yet, Jesus would not let the demons speak. Why do you think Jesus kept the demons silent? Well, at Epiphany is all about Jesus being revealed, light to the world, you know, so why is he hushing? Why is it, shh, don't tell anybody?
Well, you could imagine if somebody famous came into town and wanted to just have a simple meal at the diner, and suddenly the entire town came up and showed up and surrounded them, trying to eat and sign autographs and listen, have peace of mind in the din of everybody gathered around.
I'm sure that happens to famous people all the time.
You know, if people knew who he was, would he be able to do what he was sent to do?
Well, that's the thing. It wasn't really time yet for that full disclosure. I mean, his disciples are still learning. They're still growing. If it's a matter that people aren't ready to hear that yet, I don't know.
And it would distract, because then it would become a...
Are you doing circuits?
Yeah, well, people would be following him for purely political reasons.
Yes.
And not to actually know about God, but to see how they could gain more power, how they could game the system.
Because, you know, Messiah is supposed to be this mighty political figure. So, yeah, totally.
An easy get-rich-quick scheme.
See, I never think about the political side of it. And you always think of the political side of it.
I like the get-quick-rich scheme. Yeah. You know, quick way to power. And so if people knew who he was, it would change the relationship he had with them. It would no longer be a teacher and a healer. It would be king and Messiah and chosen one of God. And people would take him differently.
Yeah, absolutely. It would distract from what Jesus was really trying to do.
It reminds me of the temptation that we hear about in the other Gospels, where Jesus was taken to the top of the temple to throw himself off, and the angels would catch him on the way down. And if that had happened at the temple, everybody would have seen him as the chosen one of God and would have changed everything.
Yes. Yep. The devil certainly knew what he was doing with those carefully chosen temptations, for sure.
Well, there is a consistency between the teaching of Jesus and his living. He does not merely speak of servanthood in his teaching, but he exemplifies the life of a servant. How would you define a serving attitude?
Well, it's you talk the talk, you walk the walk. You live up to what it is you're saying.
It's a willingness to give of oneself.
Mm-hmm.
I was listening to I had to do a drive yesterday, so I was listening to public radio, and they're talking about the importance of laughter. And the idea if you can laugh at yourself and be humble, things go a lot smoother in life.
Yeah.
And the humility that Jesus had of not having to say, I am God's son, but instead just to say, I love you. Yeah. Here's healing. I mean, just the humility of being able to not take what was yours in order to be who the people needed you to be at that time.
It is not about your ego, the attention. I mean, we all want positive attention. We all want people to think well of us, praise us, whatever. But that's not the point. That's not why. So you can praise me every day, right? Just so that good things are lifted up, not to point out how awesome I am, just because it comes freely from your heart. Yeah. I'll do the same.
Well, I'm already perfect, so that's easy.
Ah.
But it is hard to have a serving attitude because, I know even for myself, I want to do things my way. I want to do things on my own. I want to do things that I want to do without respect to others. We want to focus on me. And the serving attitude takes us out of ourselves, like Simon's mother-in-law, and puts us to pointing towards others and the needs of others.
For sure. I like that. It kind of takes us out of ourselves. Well, and Luther's whole thing about being curved inwards or being curved outwards, we move from the focus on us to the world around us. I can't remember the Latin anymore, but anyway.
My Latin's horrible. Okay.
Let's see.
Well, the next day, Jesus gets up early before dark and goes to a deserted place for prayer. Serving can be exhausting, and we can forget the reason we serve. Prayer puts it back in perspective. Why would Jesus need to find a deserted place for prayer?
The same reason, while occasionally I go up to our bedroom and shut the door. Peace, quiet, time to focus on prayer, to be able to think. And just imagine how draining. Jesus is, God, and he's also in a human form. How exhausted, completely exhausted he had to be in every way, shape, and form, and needing that quiet moment. I always think of the song, be still and know that I am God, I think we need it.
And if you've ever tried to talk to somebody on the phone while in a loud crowd, it's very hard to both hear and be heard. So having the quiet, deserted place is a place where you can concentrate on who Jesus is talking to. His words weren't meant for public consumption. It was meant for God. And that's the other benefit of deserted places. Especially in our prayer life, we don't have to worry about having the perfect words. When we say something, we don't have to worry about it being misunderstood because God understands.
It's not like you have to have a special way of speaking in order to pray. It's talking to God, being honest with God. He knows anyway. And I think some of the most heartfelt and meaningful prayer that has happened in my life has been while I've been driving. I'm paying attention to the road, but the higher functions of my brain are, I'm just talking receiving and just being who I am. And I also really appreciate when I'm part of a worship experience where prayers are heartfelt and natural. We use pre-written prayers in worship oftentimes, and that's because we don't want to be up there stumbling over our words and distracting from prayer. But when when that prayer just flows out of them, it's powerful. I suppose you would really not want to do that.
Just an experience from my youth.
What, when you went to one of the evangelical?
Yeah, I went to evangelical camps, and when you can pray for an hour and a half, it gets to be a little long.
Yes, for sure. Okay. So I did have a youth leader who, for meal prayers, your food's getting cold before he's done. Okay. But Simon and his companions hunt him down, like the children knocking at my door. You can hear panic in the voices of the disciples. Everyone is searching for you. But Jesus does not succumb to crowd pressure. Instead, he remains clear about his mission from God. His calling would take him many other places, including the cross, in order to proclaim good news. What might we learn from Jesus about setting priorities? Yeah. It's easy to get distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbit trails. Really good at rabbit trails. Right?
Well, it's not even just rabbit trails, because sometimes rabbit trails can lead you to the most interesting
Yes.
places. It's keeping your focus, because we find that Jesus gets rabbit trails all the time when people come and ask him for healing. But it's keeping your focus on your mission, your goal. I mean, how does this lead to what your final outcome wants to be? And it's really hard because there's other priorities that jump in the way. Our lives get busy. Kids call, grandkids call, Netflix calls. We get a lot of things that happen.
I was watching a video the other day about a person talking about their workplace and how the point of the position of the person that they were working with was to make sure that everything was running well and that the employees were doing well, for their welfare, and with that understanding of we take care of things and our employees can do what they need to do and everything will run well. But this person that got caught up with the paperwork and with quotas and with politics, and they lost the point behind their job, which was to make sure everything's working well with the employees.
Well, now we come to page 2. The new members class ended with each person sharing possible ways he or she would like to serve the congregation. Each person talked about gifts and areas of interest. When it was Barry's turn, he announced, "I want to be the last person out of the church door." Everyone chuckled. Barry explained, "I want to turn the lights off and put tables away after the receptions and gatherings. Honestly, I want to make sure the last dish gets washed, dried, and put away. I will even take out the trash. Sure, I can read lessons at worship, I can teach, but what I really want is to serve by being the last person out the door when the job is done." So the questions are, what did Barry mean by when he said he wanted to be the last person out the door? And have you ever found yourself in that role? If so, describe how you felt about that role. And what brings you joy in serving?
Last person out the door. To make sure that everything's taken care of. Nothing's gotten missed. I know, I was reading the comments and I had to
Extended
chuckle.
warranty calls can be distracting too. But it's nice to be the last person out the door because you know what you set out to do has been accomplished. You've seen the dishes put away. You've seen the lights turned off. You've seen that everybody else is taken care of, and there's nothing more to worry about for that time.
Yeah. And have you ever found yourself in that role? Well, yeah, actually that happens kind of often for us. Okay, all the lights off. Yeah, the sound system's off. Okay, you know. Oh,
Heat's
yeah.
turned up.
Yeah.
But, for me, it's making sure that everything got done, that nobody's left behind. There's no tasks that are left to be taken care of.
Yep. Yeah. That reminds me of a youth walk-in that we did, and the youth director took all the kids outside to play games, and I could hear them laughing and having the best of time while I'm standing at the sink washing all the dishes and mess that they've made in their activities, and so I was the last one to get to be out and play, and for a little while, I felt resentful. Man, I'm stuck here. But then, when I got done, it was that sense of, good, things are taken care of, and now that I don't have to worry about that, now it's time to just go and play with kids.
And I think the joy is knowing you've done something, that the world has been touched in some little small way.
The exhaustion and the satisfaction you feel after having served at the banquet in Sioux Falls, or when you go to the prison. I mean, it's not an easy experience at all. I've only done it once, and it wasn't an easy experience. But just that sense of, yes, something right, something in God's name has been done, has happened here, and that's, I feel it after I've talked to somebody, and I know that our conversation has been helpful or comforting or whatever. There's a lot of joy in that, Or when I've talked to a friend or relatives and I've made them laugh or whatever. Yay! Jesus was often busy serving and helping others, but he also took time out for prayer, even if it meant getting up early in the morning and finding a deserted place. Yeah, we're not so good about the early in the morning. Take a moment and imagine a deserted place. Once that image is locked in your mind, take a deep breath and offer a prayer. Pause and allow God to still your spirit. Where's your deserted place? Describe an actual deserted place in your neighborhood, church, or home, which might be appropriate for prayer. And are there other ways to find a deserted place for prayer in the midst of your day? Do you think of one of your deserted places?
No, the sanctuary is usually deserted except for Sunday morning, and so it's a nice quiet place. You have the cross, you have the eternal candle going. You have the light, depending on which church you're in, you have the light streaming in either through stained glass windows or the side windows. It's a nice quiet place. Here at English is when you come in the morning, you have the sun coming from the east through the stained glass window in the fellowship hall, which is a nice quiet place. When we used to have the men's Bible study, that I'd get here early enough to be able to do that, and so it's a quiet place in the churches, both of them.
Yeah, and in serving different rural churches, I've come across or I've been told about folks who will just stop and go in and just take a moment. But the same can be found. I had one farmer tell me about a certain spot in his field where it gave him a really good view of the fields, and when the sun was coming up, there weren't trees in the way, so he would see a really beautiful sunrise, and that was his deserted place. It was special for him.
And I know other ways to find deserted places for prayer in the midst of your day. I know when I worked at Best Buy, we had a corner of the warehouse that people could go to pray that was a little bit off the beaten path, and unless somebody called for a particular thing. It usually wasn't a place you get disturbed.
Yeah.
And so you can find those places.
Yeah, when I was doing childcare with disabled children, sometimes it was the bathroom, just to have a moment, to breathe. You can find it anywhere. You really, you don't have to have like a sanctuary in order to have that spot.
Well, it is possible to serve more hours than our bodies will allow, leaving us exhausted, ill-tempered, and resentful. After a long day, Jesus was surrounded by the whole city at his doorstep, waiting to be healed. Is it any wonder he got up early and found a deserted place? Even that prayer time was interrupted by his own disciples. They wanted him to know that everyone was searching for him. How do you balance serving others and prayer? And how does prayer help us in our serving?
I think it's that question. In the broader culture, it's framed in self-care. Do you take the time for self-care along with all the work that you're doing? How do we balance all of that? And in this case, it's self-care is prayer. It is spending time in that conversation, in that relationship with God. It's not, I was going to say doing yoga. I suppose you can pray to God while you're doing yoga.
I know that was one of the interesting things in an interview that Pope John Paul II had, several years ago now, is he talked about prayer being part of he was constantly in prayer as he was walking, as he was listening, as he was doing other tasks. Talking to God was just part of how he made his life go through. It went through his life. And that prayer, also helps in the serving is it keeps you focused on who you're serving. I think the hard part when people think about it is when we're serving as Christians, we're not serving just the person we see right in front of us, but we're also serving God. And quite often we think about it's just being the person in front of us instead of it's God we're serving.
We could get resentful about the person, but that there's something greater happening here too.
Yeah. And I've had people get upset, they'll go and think they've done something really special to help somebody, but they didn't get a thank you note, so then they consider whatever help they did to be a waste.
Yeah.
And, we shouldn't expect God to be sending us thank you notes. Be nice.
Yeah, but he blesses us so constantly anyway. I think, we don't really have a reason to complain. But, and when we are resentful or frustrated or exhausted or whatever, that we bring that to God, that we say, hey, God, I'm frustrated or resentful here. I need you. Help me. That we don't try to hide that away. We share it. Be honest about it. All right. Sometimes we need a break from our usual ways of serving. Discern God's call to mission in your own life. Consider how God might be calling you to use untapped gifts or honed skills. Perhaps God is calling you to go out on a limb and tackle a new challenge, using every ounce of life experience, skill, and gift you can muster. My dad discovered that it was quite a while ago now. After he retired, he was asked by the administration if they had started this kind of mentoring program, and so they asked if he would mentor a young man. And at first, my dad was really reluctant, kind of like, I've given everything I can to teaching. This is supposed to be my retirement. But he did it, and it was a commitment, a 4-year commitment all through high school. But he found that some of the most meaningful times, the times where this young man really seemed to be encouraged and strengthened, was when he would take him fishing. My dad's a pretty good fisherman. And he taught him how to fish, and he taught him how to be quiet and wait and be patient. And he also taught him that, someone did care about him and somebody did listen. at the same time. And I mean, I think my dad never would have imagined that he would be serving God and serving somebody through fishing, which was really a good fit for him. What do you think?
Well, it's one of the hard parts is how does God want you to be part of God's mission? There's so many different ways, from just being a good neighbor to being generous to, going on mission trips or taking a leadership role in the church or teaching Sunday school.
No, that's why I want to, I just think of the folks who make the quilts or the blankets or, the layettes and things, or the folks who repair things or make things, or, the folks who help somebody else figure out something with finances. I mean, there's just so many different ways. I don't know if there's any part of us that can't be used for service.
What new skills might you develop as you serve? That was one of the interesting things when I went to work at Best Buy, is developing the skill to be able to talk to people, be able to communicate. So you can learn skills like that. You can learn new skills about history or understanding the people you're meeting. And so,
yeah, I remember when I first started as a baby pastor, I learned how to run wedding rehearsals and do weddings in seminary, but it really is on the job training. And we can learn all kinds of different skills, and they can be of help.
How might be God calling you to serve? And there are many ways. I think that's part of the being still, is being able to hear the word, hear God calling, saying, go here, do this. Sometimes it's just a simple thought in your mind. Give a friend a call and see how they're doing.
Yeah.
And it isn't always just the sell all your possessions and move to South Africa. It's sometimes in just the simple things. Or going in to help with Sunday school.
That reminds me of the song from the hymnal. Listen, listen, God is calling to his word in vain.
Yeah.
Listen, listen, listen.
Okay, well, we're coming to the end, so thank you for joining us today. We'll be here next week at the same time on the same channel.
I still feel like we're like anchor people sitting at a desk. Still feels like that. Hello, coming to you live. But I'm really glad that you could be here with us today. And I really appreciate that, a couple folks have chimed in the conversation. Thank you. Always feel free, please, always feel free to use the comments to interact.
And so this week we're going to be starting something new in church. We are going to be in person now. It looks like our COVID numbers have gone down, and so we should be safe to be in church as long as we follow the precautions. Mask will be required, and social distancing. We won't be singing during service. I know I've expressed to our leadership my fear is at some point the new variants will arrive, and they sound like they're strong enough that we want to be careful with that. But it should be safe to be inside as long as you aren't, again, you know your health better than we do. So if we'll also still be doing FM radio to the outside of the parking lot, and at 10:30, our 10:30 service will be broadcast on Facebook, so you can follow us on that way. So it's just opening up another option for those who would like to be in person, to be able to actually see what we look like in person rather than through a screen.
Yeah.
But we will have, keep my week straight, St. Olaf will be at 8:30 this week. Our Saviors will be at 9 o'clock. English will be at 10:30, and following worship, we will have the annual meeting for English. And so watch for information on that. And again, with English, you'll be able to join us again either in the parking area on FM radio, on Facebook. You can watch the annual meeting and make any responses on the comment section, or I'll also be setting up a Zoom meeting. And as I said, we'll be in person too with social distance.
And keep in mind, Ash Wednesday is coming up very, very quickly. There's been a little confusion about the schedule, but the schedule is
5 o'clock at Our Savior's and 7 o'clock at English in St. Olaf.
Yep.
The benefit of having two pastors is we can be at two places at the same time.
so we're really going to miss worshiping together all the time.
We'll each have to do our own sermons.
I know.
So, but we look forward to seeing you again. And again, thank you for all your support. Well, let us end with a prayer. Christ, instill in my heart an attitude of serving. Amen. You can dig deeper by going into John 13, verses 1 through 20.
Yep, and then the last word, the encouragement for your week. Look for a new way to serve in the coming week.
So, again, thank you for joining us.
Peace be with you.
Oh, I realize there's one other correction I have to give from the sermon on Sunday.
Oh.
There are two Carol Swansons in our lives. My mom is also Carol Swanson.
Yes.
And so...
Actually, we have a number of Carol Swansons.
Or Carols in our lives.
Or Carols, yes.
And so I know Carol here in Walnut Grove got some questions about that. And so
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I wanted to specify that. Well, God be with you.
Bye.